Many weeks ago, I started getting requests that I talk about Feywild Flora and Fauna / terrain, and I haven't done it because I'm a coward. For some reason, I felt that making a video on this subject would mean I have to planned out a whole bunch of animals and plants already that would just be ready-made for you guys, which is a huge task. But as I thought about it, I realized that this is actually a very easy video to make once you have a system. So if you want to know how to quickly and easily construct your own Feywild plants, animals, or combinations of the two, then stick around because I have a flowchart. Did I do it? Did I make the word flowchart exciting? Before I get started, let me do my spiel real quick. On this channel, I like to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, specifically the Feywild, although I feel like a lot of the stuff I talk about can be translated to places other than the Feywild, but it's geared towards that because I'm trying to world build a part 2 to Wild Beyond the Witchlight for our campaign. And as always, like, subscribe, leave a comment, especially leave a comment if you particularly like any of these ideas or have come up with a system of your own or any cool plants or animals of your own, because I am but one person and I like to think I have a lot of good ideas, but I don't have them all. I'm gonna do my system for animals first and then plants. Fauna, animals. The system is really quite simple. We are going to start with an animal. I know that sounds obvious, but in the Feywild, everything is a reflection of the material plane. Sometimes that might not be obvious how it's reflecting, but you can just modify material plane stuff for the Feywild. So pick an animal. You can also, of course, pick 2 or more animals if you're wanting to combine some, sort of like a griffin or a liger situation. And you can also combine animals with plants. But I would pick no more than 2 or 3 if you're going to start with a combination, because then we're gonna add other stuff. I want to start with an incredibly simple animal, a rat. The next thing I think you should decide is the alignment of this animal. I know that can be a little fuzzy, especially with all the chaos of the Feywild, but is it good? Is it evil? Does it have an alignment? Is it intelligent enough to be for or against? Or is it more animalistic? The next thing you're going to want to pick is size. Is this animal smaller than it would normally be? Is this rat, I'm gonna think like Australian rat. I'm thinking like a big rat here. Is it smaller than average? Is it mouse size? Is it a normal size rat? Or is it a really big rat? I think my rat is going to be chaotic neutral, and it is going to be slightly bigger than normal. This isn't too crazy yet, but then we're gonna get into other features. This next step is the most open, but it's also the most important for adding that special Feywild flavor. What I wanna do now is decide what realm my animal lives in, because if it lives in one of the 4 main courts, or if I know some of you guys have smaller Fey courts that you've created, if it belongs in a certain area and those areas have themes, then you can kind of theme the animal to that area, and that'll help guide the flavor you give it. My rat is going to be in the fall court, and in my fall court, I'm really leaning into a sap mushroom decay theme. At this point, I want to add at least 1 feature to this animal to finalize that more whimsical, magical, strange nature. Right now, I have a chaotic neutral rat. Not that uncommon. It's slightly bigger than normal and it's in the fall court, but what makes it obviously Fey? I think my rat is going to be really gross, where it's going to look sort of slick, and if you were to touch it in combat or try to pet it or it ran across you, I think I'm going to have sap growing out. You know, when some animals sweat and they're just shiny? I want that sap to be in the coat, really nasty. And I think it needs 1 more feature so it doesn't seem like it's just a gross rat that needs a bath. So here's a list of questions, and there are definitely more traits that I could come up with right now, but here's a list that I think I could start with. I could ask, does the rat have wings? If so, what kind of wings? Are they fairy wings, bug wings, bird wings? Does it have horns? If so, how many? How big? What size? Is it scaly? Is it feathered? Does it take on the qualities of some other animal that's not furred? Is there something growing out of it? This is where we can combine our animals and plants in a really interesting way. But I think I'm going to complete my rat. The parts of it that are skin or fleshy, because they have fur, but they also have naked parts on their tail and on their legs. I want to make those parts made of wood. Like it's sort of a sentient tree situation. Are you seeing it? Are you seeing the picture? Tell me you're seeing the picture. Could even have like little maple leaves growing out of its tail. That'd be cute. I feel like if you add too much, it's a little maybe too Lovecraftian, like incomprehensible, hard to picture. But if you start base animal, maybe 2 or 3 animals, combine them how you like, decide how big they are, decide what they're like. Are they just chaotic, good, evil? And then add 1 to 3 features, you have a really interesting Fey animal. And it's like, not that hard. I feel like plants get slightly more complicated because, I mean, there's a lot of different types of animals, but there's a lot of types of plants as well. Even if you go down to the level of flower versus vine versus bush, tree, even grasses or mushrooms, and I am not having a debate here about whether a mushroom is a plant or not. I'm not doing it. It's a plant for these purposes, okay? It's a plant. So as I go through this list, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick a plant. Probably should have prepared this beforehand, but how much more natural and trustworthy is it if I'm just like doing it on the fly? I want to design a tree. And this tree I'm going to put in the spring court. Mix it up a little, go crazy. First thing I need to decide, is my tree sentient? And if it's sentient, does it have an alignment? Just like with the animals. And if it's sentient, also ask yourself, is it sentient because it used to be something else? Did it used to be humanoid? Did it used to be an animal? And is it aware of that history? I'm going to make my tree not sentient. More specifically, I want it to be sort of like an oak tree, a very simple, basic tree, just as my outline. Next question about your plant. Do you want it to be in any way edible? Is it going to grow fruits? Is it going to be edible entirely? Are only parts of it going to be edible? And if so, are there magical or physical effects that come about from eating it? My tree is going to have fruit that are edible, despite the fact that it's sort of designed after an oak tree. And to keep it interesting, I'm going to have that fruit growing out of the trunk as opposed to hanging off branches. Although I do really like the idea of a branch being like laden with heavy fruits. But I want this to be growing out of the trunk. I don't know, I'm feeling it. And this is actually an idea I had earlier. I want the fruits to be like this white, sticky, sappy fruit where like, it's not even coated in a shell to peel off. Like as soon as you touch it, it's like, it's nasty. And when this fruit is eaten, I want it to have a numbing effect. Specifically, if someone were in pain, they could eat this fruit or apply it topically and the pain would just go away. So we've picked a base plant, we've decided whether or not it's sentient and whether or not any part of it is edible. And if so, that's when you have to sort of get into like, how is it edible? What does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it do? But now back to the main plant. Right now I have an oak tree with really weird fruit growing out of the side. So I want to change something else about the upper parts of the tree or the bark itself in order to make it different. I want to add 1 to 3 features just like I did for the animals. If I were designing a flower, I might ask myself what color and shape the petals are. Do they look like something else? Like how we have in our actual real world a plant that has petals shaped like a hummingbird. I think that's a thing, right? Or on the flip side, are you going to create a bug or an animal that looks like this flower, like orchid mantises? I mean, orchid mantises are basically just fairies, right? If it has a stem, is that stem a different shape or color than normal? Is it twisted? Is it knotted? Is it jagged? If we're talking about branches or the trunk of a tree or vines, same thing. If something is normally straight or slightly crooked, what other shape or form can it take? Does it look like it's posing as something? Maybe you can have a type of tree that looks like a human being by the way that its branches grow. And what does it grow out of? Does it grow out of stone, out of the ground? Is this a situation where it grows out of itself? Like you have one base tree and then trees just growing out the side of it endlessly and then trees growing out of those trees? I'm like really into trees right now. Too many trees, Hannah, too many trees. I want to have this oak tree have spiraled branches, like almost perfectly spiraled, where you could even like slip inside it and sleep there comfortably and like know you're not going to fall out. So I have a base tree and I have these white sticky fruits growing out of the trunk. I want spiral branches, and now I want to do something with the leaves. For some reason, I kind of want to make them like poison ivy leaves, like where you get really itchy and like a really bad rash. So even though it's a very comforting tree and it takes away pain and it, you can like rest in its branches or hang from them, if you touch the leaves, you're like incredibly itchy. And the fruit, that itchiness is the only thing it doesn't fix. Another example that I saw on Pinterest a few weeks ago is a dandelion. Someone combined a lion and a dandelion, the plant, and just put them in one. And they didn't even have to like change that much. I mean, once you do that, it's already fascinating without other features. So one more time, my plan for the plants is to start with a basic plant or a combination of two or a combination of a plant with an animal, but like the plant being the base main part of it. I want to decide if it's sentient, and if so, why it's sentient, or if there's no reason at all. I just want to decide, does it have an alignment? What is it? And is this plant entirely or in part edible? If so, what part? What does that look like? What's the experience of eating it? And then I want to make sure that I just add in one or two interesting features. Again, it doesn't have to be a bunch, and if you even just did one, it's still whimsical, it's still magical and different and therefore exciting. I found the mere thought of creating a bunch of plants and animals for the Feywild to be so overwhelming. I mean, besides the ones, there's stuff online that you can pull from, but I want to be able to have a world that really feels diverse, that feels real. And it freaked me out, but I feel like this system is very, very simple, and maybe it was obvious to you. It was not to me. I hope this was helpful. If so, let me know. If you're like, this is dumb and was a total waste of my time, please don't let me know. But if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I really do love the community that has been building on this channel, and I just, I hope you have a good day or night or whatever it is, because you deserve it. And I'll see you next time.